Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is December 12th, and right now we are looking at the Camino Island Doppler radar here on the left. If you're wondering why it's raining across some of the Puget Sound here this morning, it looks like the north flow is picking up a little bit of instability off the Puget Sound and depositing it down across the Seattle Metro here, including Port Angeles, Port Townsend, Sequim areas up there. Should be ending as we get towards mid-morning and early afternoon hours. You can see on the right here, mid-level water vapor loop. Look at this upper level low spinning across Oregon, Idaho, Montana, bringing some moisture out up ahead of it here. Upper level snowfall continues as eventually kick off to the east and let this ridge build over the area here, dry us out. Offshore winds, maybe a couple sunny days here before an Arctic air mass will make its way down across British Columbia here and try to include the entire Pacific Northwest in here. Some interesting solutions are possible with this Arctic air coming up here. We'll go over that in some detail here in a moment. Now looking for Missoula, Montana, turning colder the next 2 weeks. You can see this goes all the way up through Christmas Eve here shown. It's going to get brutally cold. Interior BC, east of the Cascades. So heads up now. It is time to prepare. Bone-chilling temperatures are on the way. This is the black ice warning for the winter here. Visibility down to a quarter mile or less. Black ice just forms. You don't see it out there. You get some clearing overnight and it can form on the roadway. Your thermometer in your car might say 36, but it could be ice on the road. So watch out for that. It gets people every single year. So heads up for the black ice there. Really across anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. This is mountain snow and low snow levels here across Southern California. This is a big deal when they start getting snow down towards the Grapevine there in Southern California. So watch out. Your National Weather Service forecast. Pay close attention to them if you are watching from down there or you're traveling to Southern California. Now let's take a look here. We're looking at 2-meter temperature as we scroll through the week here. Not too bad, but still pretty chilly east of the mountains here. Some teens, even some single digits across Idaho, Montana, eastern Oregon, BC, and Washington. West of the Cascades are not doing too bad, but we could have some refreezing in through the overnight hours here. Now watch what happens as we go on in towards Saturday here. Look at this Arctic air sag south across British Columbia towards Washington. It gets all the way out across the coastal areas as well. Some teens are possible, but look at east of the Cascades. I mean, these are not wind chill readings, folks. These are negative Fahrenheit temperatures across central BC, eastern Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. The cold air is very likely on its way here, and it could create some very interesting weather, especially west of the Cascades here, that we'll look at now. So this is the European last night's run, 06Z. Put this into motion here, and you can see us dry out. A couple of weak impulses move down across the Rockies here. We dry out for a few days going through Friday, and now as we go through Saturday morning, you see the Arctic front sag south across British Columbia here. Some of this gets out over the water here and spawns a little bit of a low pressure system. Could bring some convergence zone activity and very low snow levels here across western Washington, southwest BC. This would be going on in through next Saturday afternoon here, and then eventually kicks off to the east there. But again, it doesn't take much moisture to bring a very disruptive snowfall across portions of areas west of the Cascades. Now taking a look here, let's look at snow 10-to-1 ratio. You can see this system as it continues to spin out here across the Intermountain West and move off. Impulses move down from the north, bringing additional snowfall. Places maybe western Montana, Idaho Panhandle, a little bit for eastern BC as well. Then we go on into the Arctic front coming down this weekend here and potentially bringing some lowland snowfall to southwest BC and western Washington. Could include other areas as well. We'll go ahead and watch that day at a time here. Now taking a look at the winds. This is the GFS, hot off the presses, 12Z run. As we go on into Wednesday, you can see the gorge winds start to kick up Wednesday night and through Thursday. A little bit of Fraser gap wind blowing across northwest Washington there. And you can see this easterly flow all the way out over the ocean here as we go on in through Thursday afternoon. Gorge winds continue on in through Friday morning here, Friday afternoon. And you can see some northwesterly winds coming as the Arctic front starts to make its way south. Fraser River Gap starts to go here. You get some interesting convergence zone activity up northwest interior of Washington, southwest BC by Sunday morning. Then this air starts to leak down the Puget Sound, maybe some kind of a modified frontal system, some convergence zone activity here across the Puget Sound as we go through Sunday afternoon. We'll have to wait and work out those details as we get closer. It just does show that there is a potential for some interesting scenarios here. As you can see, the Okanagan River Valley, a cold air conduit, is busy. Some strong north winds blasting down out of that cold air conduit into eastern Washington shown there as this Arctic air overtakes much of the Pacific Northwest here. As you can see, the strong offshore wind again as we go on through early next week. But again, models have been trending colder here, but we need to see a little bit more consistency before we truly start sounding the alarm here about this Arctic outbreak. Now taking a look here, this is sea level pressure. You can see why we have the offshore winds here. This is the cutoff low out here over California. Thursday afternoon shown here, just the high pressure moving out across the region. No big windstorm expected with that. The gradient is just not quite tight enough, although there could be some strong winds coming through the gorge there, just to the east of Portland, Vista House down there, if you have heard about that. The Columbia River is a sea level gap here, and it kind of tends to highlight some of these high winds when we get these offshore flow patterns. So now as we move on in through Saturday, look at this Arctic high sag south across the region. Some of this air gets out over the Pacific Ocean, could spawn some cyclogenesis, weak troughing across some of southwest BC, western Washington. This is kind of a classic setup for some convergent zone activity to move across the region there going into Sunday afternoon. Look at this Arctic high just sag south across the region. Very cold air would be over much of the Pacific Northwest, shown here by Monday morning here. So yeah, I mean, look at this monster high. That would bring some really cold air across the region here. Very high confidence really east of the mountains as of right now. Now taking a look at the GFS 12Z, let's go ahead and put this into motion, and you can see us dry out through Wednesday, Thursday shown, Friday afternoon shown there. Here comes Saturday's Arctic front moving down across the region, and look at this, would be favorable for some lowland snow here across western Washington, southwest BC as we go through this weekend here. But we're going to work out these details as we get closer. Don't get too caught up in the details just yet, but it does look like we're going to turn cold. Now taking a look here, this is looking at northern hemisphere, Alaska, BC, Washington, Oregon, California, Pacific Ocean here, Hawaiian Islands. You can see our ridge offshore here allowed that storm system to form. It kicks off to the east. Here goes our next ridge there, just dominating the Pacific Northwest here shown. And now watch this ridge start to retrograde to the west a little bit, bringing this north flow down across the region here, trying to get this polar lobe to get out over the Pacific Ocean a little bit here. That's what it's looking like here on some of the recent model runs. But you can imagine the flow around this high moving down out of the north here, and some of cross-polar flow all the way down into British Columbia here. Some very cold air potentially reaching our area, especially east of the mountains, shown Sunday morning here. Now let's take a look at the GFS 12Z versus the 6Z. These are 2-meter temperature anomaly. So this is at the surface. This isn't showing just how unusually cold the air is going to get here. But as we go through this week, you can still see the Pacific Northwest pretty chilly here as we go on in through Thursday morning. Friday morning shown here. And then you can see this Arctic air start to sag south across BC. And look at this air mass, folks. This is pegged off scale. This is Fahrenheit -33 over a large region of British Columbia here, seeping down into Washington, Idaho, Montana at this point. Look at it, covers almost all of Washington by the time you get into Monday night here, if you believe the GFS. But the last two runs have really trended towards some very cold air getting down over the region here. Last night's GFS run was not as cold. Now taking a look here, I just wanted to show you guys this again. This is the 10-day precipitation anomaly. You can see the huge deficit here along the west coast of North America, all the way up through BC, towards southeast Alaska, all the way down towards the northern California coastline, as we're usually getting some wet, moist systems off the Pacific at this time of year, and it's just not happening. Now taking a look here, the European deterministic, I believe here, yes it is. You can see the air possibly turning colder here across much of the Pacific Northwest. Some lows maybe down into the teens here. You know, we're still a little bit into fantasy land at this point, but I'm just trying to get people, familiar with the potential for some cold air coming up here. You can see a little bit of snowfall starting to show up here in some of the ensemble runs here, but you can still see we have great uncertainty as some of these runs are dry. Some of them are very light, but there are some disruptive snowfalls included in there for SeaTac Airport shown here, as you can see all 50 ensemble members shown. Now looking at Spokane, look at some of these temperatures, folks. This blue line is a control run, and the highs are below zero on some of the days here. That is just crazy cold. Now you can see here some of these overnight lows getting down to the negative teens Fahrenheit here, and even the mean has these overnight lows getting below zero across the region here. But you can still see we have some uncertainty in some of these runs here by these gray lines. You can see that some of the runs still have, us being fairly warm here. So it's not a sure thing with this Arctic air yet, but we are getting higher confidence, especially east of the Cascades with this Arctic air moving south. This is the interior of BC. High confidence right now with the cold air making its way down there. Very few ensemble members show anything but extremely severe cold moving down into the interior of BC. Kamloops Airport shown here. This is for Pendleton. You can see the very cold air arriving here as we get on into Sunday morning here, and potential below negative readings here showing up. This is Payne Field. You can see some very cold air moving down. Even some of these ensembles are in the single digits here, but there are a few warmer solutions, so there's things we still need to work out here, especially west of the Cascades with some of the details of this Arctic air. And you can see the kind of warm up occurring back as we get towards Christmas back in here. We're not going to worry about that too much just yet, just pointing it out a little bit here. 6 to 10 day, you can see west is going to stay cold. 8 to 14 day, still that signal for cold air here, but we're getting way out there into fantasy land at that point. Not going to worry too much about that right now. But the good bet is here is we're going to be definitely below average precipitation. Even if we do get some kind of Arctic front moving down, it's not going to drop a lot of precipitation, not what we're used to here across places west of the Cascades. This goes through December 21st here. So anyway, yeah, looks like that cold air is going to make its way down towards Pacific Northwest. We'll have more information tomorrow. The confidence is going to be higher on just where this cold air is going to set up, how much of it will get down west of the Cascades, and just how cold we're going to get really east of the Cascades on through Idaho and Montana as well. So interesting stuff coming up here, folks, at the end of this week and through this weekend here. So we'll go over this again tomorrow in some great detail. Hope you guys are having a good day. Enjoy some potential sunshine across the region here, but watch out for those overnight and early morning hours, the refreezing, the black ice on the roadways out there. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good time. Click like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.